Welcome to the Contagious Code podcast, where we dive deep into code, learn practical skills, celebrate the beauty of engineering, and eliminate imposter syndrome. I'm Tejas Kumar, and I've been building on the web for over 20 years at places like Bursail, Spotify, Zeta, and more. Today on the podcast, my guest is Pratim Bhosale. Pratim is an expert in Backend, Golang, and developer experience. She works at Treble, and in this discussion today, we talk a lot about developer experience, Golang, but also about AI and retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, where Pratim built her own her own vector database against which she can perform RAG. If all of these terms don't mean anything to you yet, that's fine. We outline them in the episode. There's also other episodes on the podcast where we talk about things like RAG, etc. I encourage you to search for them. However, the most important thing about this episode is you will see a developer from a former discipline like Backend and Golang thrive and flourish in AI. And that's, I'm guessing that's a lot of you, right? You're thinking AI is so common. Do we have a future in AI? What can we do to prepare ourselves for that future? How can we play? And what you will see is Pratim is the kind of developer who does that. Pratim is an adaptive developer who has a history in Golang and backend systems, now pivoting and getting into AI from that side, showing you that if she can do it, if I can do it, if Kent and other guests can do it, you can do it. And that's really the goal of today, is to show you how to get into AI, talking about things like embeddings, vectors, and more. Before we begin, this podcast is separate to my day job, and the way we can do that is through partners and sponsors. Let's take a moment to acknowledge our partner, and then we'll move on with the episode. The Contagious Code podcast is partnered with Code Crafters. Code Crafters is a great way to level up your coding skills. How it works is you choose a programming language you want to get better at, JavaScript, Python, and you choose a tool that developers use, Git, Redis, Docker. And what they have you do is they have you build the tool in the language that you chose. And by doing this, you get better at the tools the developers use and the language that you choose. You get a 2-for-1. There's a generous free tier. If you want to start paying, you can use the link in the show notes. That's tej.as/codecrafters. Thanks for sticking around. Here's my discussion with Pratim Bhosale. Pratim Bhosale, welcome.
Thank you so much, Tejas. Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited. I mean, you've been a backend developer and now a developer advocate, and you obviously speak at a lot of conferences. That's where we met. And so I'm really excited to talk to you today about all these topics.
Same here. I think I've seen a lot of your podcasts, and I was actually going through one of them today, something around what I think we would talk around. So I think there's a lot of connection points for us, and I'm really looking forward to this.
Fantastic. Let's maybe start by talking about things so most of our guests on the podcast have been like web, sort of front-end leaning developers and AI. Not so many, who are so into Golang like you. Maybe we can start there. You're a Google developer expert, of course, in Golang. You're interested in Rust. You have worked and do work in search technologies. You've done some stuff around full text and vector and hybrid search. Where does that come from? And maybe for people who are more leaning towards the website, what benefits can they get from sort of Golang and learning that side of the stack?
Right. So I think I'd like to cover where did I get into Go and why just Backend overall. For me, this wasn't like a very strong decision in terms of like I feel more strongly about the web or I feel more strongly about the backend. I had a clear problem in front of me that I don't have the patience to go through small and minute details of design on the front end. Like during my engineering days, I tried spending some time building websites and understanding design. And that's when I realized like, I don't understand colors. Like I don't want to call myself colorblind because I'm definitely not. But the point is like, I'm not a design. I don't lean towards design. I don't lean towards like what should be where. And that's when I started like trying out more terminal oriented things. And I was like, okay, this is what I like. This is simple to my brain. This is type, you get an output and things are easier. And that's when during my engineering career, I decided that, okay, I want to have a career which is more inclined towards a backend oriented career, I might say. Yeah. So yeah, that's me and why I chose understanding systems and databases and all of that. It's as simple as that.
So it's less complex in a sense, because you don't have to think about accessibility and buttons and where should they go and how should they look and so on.
I think you were actually one of the few people, like when we met at the Budapest conference, you were the one to open my eyes about accessibility. And I know it comes from a very privileged point of view for me to not think about it. And I now understand how important it is for a lot of people. And now I'm at least aware of it and I try to go through it filter, but I think my brain just works more from a connection point of side where you connect the dots and there isn't another UI or UX involved in it.
Yeah. And we need that, right? Because if the people who do the work that you've been doing have spent a lot of time obsessing over placements, pixels, accessibility, then they may not create systems that are as resilient and robust. Okay, thank you. That's what got you into Go and Backend and systems like that. But then, it's one thing to be into Golang, Backend and systems, and it's another thing to be so involved to become a GDE, a Google Developer Expert. How does one do that? How does one go from I like backend, I work in backend, to now I'm going to be a GDE, I'm going to speak at conferences, I'm going to write articles, I'm going to give talks, etc.
So how does one do that? One does that by involving the community aspect to things. Like one does that by not keeping knowledge to themselves, because I have realized the best way I have learned things when I have shared them or written about them or like just discussed them among people, not just public spaces, but just in a group of people. And that's where the part of GD comes. Like a lot of people reach out to me saying that, hey, you're a Google expert GD. So are you also an expert in building backend systems? Are you an expert in building distributed systems? And it's a surprise to them, which I think when I tell them that I actually haven't written a lot of production code in Go. And with Treble, the current company that I'm working, this is the first time I have written production level Go SDK code. And every day is a step when I'm like, okay, my Go SDK is getting tested. People are using it. And is there any response? Have I done something different? So actually, this is the right time for me when I'm testing my own ideologies or my learnings. But most of the GDE part or most of my experience has come from learning and sharing and writing about what I have done. So I hope that explains the part.
Absolutely, yeah. There's such a call here to build in public and to share things you're learning as you learn them to add value to people. I think like a lot of the things that we do, even things like sports and fitness and workouts, like there's an extra level to them when we can do them together with the support of other people, right? Like sometimes I go on runs in really bad weather and it's raining. This happened recently. It was like it was raining very heavily, and on this run in the middle of like a forest, I saw so many other runners, and we both like looked at each other, going like, why do we do this to ourselves, and so when you have that shared support, it just gets better. Okay, so I hear you. I think that's fantastic. And I think immediately, like we just started the episode, there's already a takeaway here for people. If you want to advance in your career, maybe even be a GDE or something like that, so you should maybe start sharing things that you're learning. You've helped companies. You mentioned Treble, for example, do a lot of Go work and scale backends, and you've even written a lot about microservice architectures. What are some principles developers should know or expect when building? Like, okay, I guess a very simple way of asking this is like, why microservice? And the reason I'm asking why microservices is because you've been so like vocal about it. For many reasons: clear API contracts, it's more observable, etc. Perhaps can you elaborate a little bit on that? Like, why are microservices so great? Maybe you've refactored like a big monolith or something into services that has saved time, money, effort. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I think why microservices has been a discussion and conversation now for a decade. Sometimes I personally feel sometimes people, now that we are so much into this AI conversation and there's so much change happening around artificial intelligence, machine learning, that I do sometimes get a vibe or feeling that we have forgotten as a community that most of the services today also run on microservices. And one of the very basic things that we use are bank apps, our grocery apps, or medical apps. They still use microservices, and they are they hold a big chunk of how our complete system works right now. And that's that is a great starting point to talk about why microservices. The microservices architecture has been like tested again for a very long time, and this is when we talk about monolith systems. Like monolith systems again is something that we've seen in banks. Now, banks are where the code has been very, very old. That we call it old and legacy. We call it legacy. And that's when monolith systems have been working. They still work. There are a lot of the banks today still use monolith code. And one of the perks for them is the databases they use. These are some of the most internal databases that are not even publicly used anymore. Like these are databases used specifically for financial transactions. And that's the coupling between monolith systems and databases. The coupling is so old that you would rather want to not touch it instead of like wanting to convert it into a microservice.
Right. But microservices inherently, and just we're using these terms, I think it maybe makes sense to define them quickly for listeners. Monolith meaning a code base where all your services, all your logic is in like one big blob or rock, so to speak, and microservices meaning like you have literally small services that do a bunch of other stuff, which is better in a sense because you can test them. You can if one breaks, your entire application doesn't break, etc. Cool. So banks, you're saying, have monoliths because they just tend to be older, and the benefits of microservices, why you like them so much, why you're so vocal about them, is because they're easier to test and recover from, as opposed to like if something breaks, you have to go looking for a needle in a big haystack. Does that track?
Right. I think you've summed it up very quickly. Sometimes I'm not able to go out of a conversation and give a higher view, and I think I love whenever you do that you're able to sum up a speaker's main topic as well, and just like get out of. I was recently thinking about this thing of like bias of knowledge. Like we all come with a bias of knowledge, and like curse of knowledge or bias of knowledge. I'm not really sure what's the right word. But sometimes the speaker is so in depth about a topic that they are not able to get out and like just get a whole view about it. But yeah, you're correct about the fact that it's much more manageable when it's a microservice, and then you have API contracts, and you have different ways you can communicate with different microservices.
This is I want to, what you said about the curse of knowledge or the bias of knowledge is so I want to double click on that, because like at some point we will talk about developer experience and how like being in tune with what developers want. In other words, taste. And I think a lot of that has overlap with this bias of knowledge. For example, I've seen so many companies creating developer tools and solutions to problems that don't exist, or at least they can't communicate these problems well. So anyway, just a little maybe tease or hint at where we'll go. But while we're on the subject of Golang, I was quite impressed. This is like, I think even before we met, you built a cool thing once that I remember seeing on the internet, which was, correct me if I'm wrong, it was like a recommendation system that used location, device location. Okay, first of all, am I remembering this correctly? Secondly, this was a thing built with Golang to recommend things to users. Now, am I remembering correctly? Am I off?
The thing is, I have built a lot of things around recommendation systems.
Okay.
Point. And I have built a lot of things with Go.
So probably.
I'm not really. I don't remember, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't remember. So the recent thing I built was not with Go, but it was again. It's named Cargo Chat. It's again a thing that you use to chat with codebase. And before,
so like Cursor.
Yes. So I like to call it poor man's Cursor.
Okay.
Because I'm
Cool.
still developing it, and it's still under like I have to work on its precision, the embedding model underneath. Like currently, it works okay-ish. I have to push it to a point where like I can literally save my cursor bill or any ID tool I'm using, but I know for a fact that I'm gonna reach there. Pretty
Okay,
sure.
and can we talk about that? This is very interesting. How does one build that? Th- I can guess, but I'm probably wrong. And that's honestly the best part about this podcast is I love being wrong, and then love having experts like yourself correct it. So what you're doing is you index the entire code base, and do you use embeddings? Do you use vector search for? I'm lost already. So if somebody wanted to build a project like the one you're talking about, I guess where would is this project open source first of all, and second of all, oh, it is.
It is. It is. It is.
Whoa.
Of
Okay,
course.
let's walk through it. Let's walk through the design. Let's maybe start even before. Where did you get this idea? Was it just like I love Cursor, I want to build something that's like that but open source and free? And then second, how do we build it?
Um, So yes, the code base is open source, and I think I'm
That's
super
awesome.
proud to say that this would be my first tool that I'm planning to build and maintain and develop with like a full focus in open
Awesome.
source. Super excited for that. So I try to
Yeah.
spend some time every week just researching or seeing what's happening in that domain. So let's see how that goes.
So you forked VS Code to start.
No,
What?
no. So this isn't, so what I'm building is I'm not building an ID. Like
Okay.
I'm not building, what I'm building is currently it's a terminal tool. You could say it feels like Claude code.
Okay.
So that's how, or like I'm pretty sure like OpenAI also has Codex now. So yeah, that is the more vibe. Why I build this? So when I was using the IDs, there was a time when if you're above your calls, like if you're above
Yeah.
your queries, and like if you're under a particular subscription, or sometimes when things are down, like we recently, like all of the IDs were down, and you're desperate to to just understand something or find something, and you hit your query like, how does this function work in my code base? And then you get an error from your tool saying that search tool did not work. And it happens quite often, like it happens even today. And I think this is something that all IDs and all agentic tools are working towards improving.
Yeah.
And that thing was like, at some point, it got super annoying. Like those errors would come when I badly needed to like quickly understand my code.
Mm.
And I had a basic understanding about like how search works in different domains. Now you've covered this, right? They just like, we have keyword search,
Oh yeah.
we have full text, we have keyword, we have vector. So search itself is a big domain.
Yeah.
And these AI IDs are actually I think the first product in the whole AI domain where all types of search are so beautifully used together.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's where my whole I've been working with search, around search, for the last 2 or more than 2 years now. That's a different story. I would love to tell you sometime other how I got into this. It wasn't something that I was born with or curious about. I'd like to give a shout out to my engineer back at Surrey, like my senior engineer that I worked with. His name is Emmanuel, and he was our senior search engineer. And I had the opportunity to work very closely with him. Like every day I would send him a multiple pings like, hey, I'm doing this, am I doing it right? And like he was super senior and he had a lot of more important things to do, but he would take the time to like sit with me and talk out my theories of me. And then that just like opened me up to the curiosity towards search. So yeah, coming back to cargo chat, one of the things that we've been doing with our IDs for a long time is grep search. We do grep
Yeah.
on terminals. So IDs also use grep search. Like currently when we agentic IDs that we talk, they also use grep search. It's not like always everything that you put into your query will be sent to your LLM. There will be multiple steps that could happen. And that was my starting point for building this tool. Like, how do I combine a simple search in, like, if I want to search something in my code base, specifically for my code base, and I don't want to spend money on my ID tools. Like, I want to save I look at it more as a saving tool. Like, I'd like to keep these IDs for more expensive searches or more LLM specific searches. But when something is purely oriented towards my code base, and I need some amount of context, I can use Cargo Chat.
This is so cool. Okay. I have many follow-up questions. First of all, I think you've done such a great job telling me what it is and what it isn't. We talked earlier about the curse of knowledge, where like sometimes you're so deep in it you struggle to like say. I love it. I was so wrong when I said it's a fork of VS Code, and you're like, no. There's no UI. It's a CLI tool, and it's think about Claude Code. That was brilliant. Thank you for that. It's oriented me well. So now, if I understand correctly, I spin up this CLI tool in my current working directory, which is probably some repository I'm working in.
Yes.
And I can just ask questions about my code. For example, where am I, spinning up the service, or what port am I listening on? Is there an environment variable for whatever? And I get answers. You mentioned the different kinds of search: keyword search, vector search, grep search, and you said tools like Cursor and all these other like Windsurf things, they marry those technologies very well. What does your search pipeline look like?
So my search pipeline has the same things. It actually does not have pure grep search. Like for example, if you want to just search via Control F or something, that is also something that a specific tool can do. And under Cursor, there's a tool call that is just a command line to call of like grep. What I do is the vector search part of it, where if I want to, for example, this code base, this tool also uses something known as re-ranking. It uses the concept of re-ranking. So if I actually open Cursor Chat and I use my own tool on Cursor Chat and I ask it like, what is re-ranking and how is it used in this code base? That's for the first part, like what is re-ranking? It would use an LLM support because this isn't something part of the code base.
Yeah.
And how is it used in this code base is for what it would search the code base, and it would tell me in file number XYZ, this is the part. So, yeah.
How does it find that in your code base?
So I just had a thought in my mind to just bring it up. One of the cool things why I love my tool and is that along with all these suggestions, it gives you the file placement of where your code is, which I like. Like if your code base is longer, it tells you like in main.go at line number this is where it uses. And I think this could be a small moat I might have if I were to go against all the IDs where I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but I think they don't really give you the line number. They just give, because again, you can click on it and get to it, but there isn't like a line number and XYZ. So about how it works, again, I'd like to connect back to, you have spoken about concepts like re-ranking in your previous videos also, and it's very well explained.
Thanks. Let's spend like a sentence or two explaining that for the audience here. I'm happy to do that, or you can, since you're the expert. I don't really mind.
I think I loved your explanation around re-ranking and how you explain vector search, and I can just follow up then.
Definitely. Okay, yeah. So vector search, I mean, vector search is comparing big lists of numbers. So you compare topics, ideas, sentences, words into a big list of numbers, and you compare the distance. How close is this to that? And the problem with vector search is it gives you like semantic proximity, but not contextual proximity. And this is where a re-ranker comes in, which is a specialized machine learning model that looks at a result set and the initial idea you're trying to capture and literally just like re-ranks, like this thing matches better to the query than that thing. And so your pipeline typically And I'm actually also building an app that's not code-based search, but that's very similar. So I'd love to continue to exchange ideas. What you're going to do is you're going to do vector search first, and then you're going to do maybe some other, maybe grep search, and then you hand both these results to a re-ranker, which is a specialized machine learning model, and it will literally just like rank them according to the initial query, and then you serve that to a user. So that's my understanding. I'd love if you could tell me if I was right or wrong, and then how that shows up in your app. And then maybe we can talk about how that shows up in my app, which is very different than your app because it's not code-based search.
Okay. So yes, most part around, when we're talking about the search pipeline or the whole pipeline about how code RAG works, how the RAG system works here, because it's specific to the code base itself. It isn't something that will it does use LLM. Like there is a point where an LLM call can happen for external information, but its main goal is to just explain you the current code base. You mentioned vector search. That's and how re-ranking works. That's completely in line to what I was going to share. A few things I would like to add light on is the embedding model. Now, there are different embedding models that you can use for converting your query text into embeddings. And yeah.
Sorry, I just want to ask you, do you also convert the code base text into embeddings, or is it just the query text?
Exactly. I do convert the code base also into.
Wow. So and this is okay. So I'm super interested. So now, what if it's a massive code base, like with like 65,000 files, right? Like, are you converting all of those to embeddings, or are you storing them? What model are you using? Is it an on-device model? Is it a remote model? This is so fascinating.
So currently, it cannot work on a big code base, but I will extend it to step by step, baby steps. I'll try the limits and I'll improve the memory size and all of that. So this again depends upon the underlying vector database that you're using, the model that you're using. So one of the cool things while I was building this, I learned is there are different embedding models that are good for different use cases. And all these embedding models have different sizes as well. So a short answer to all of this is the bigger the embedding model, bigger the database vector database capabilities, the bigger code base you can chunk and index. But point is that if your RAG was just focused on text, like text to text, you will have a different embedding model. Now, because my text is code, my embedding model can be more specific towards code. Hugging Face has a leaderboard, an evals leaderboard purely for embedding models, under which they have told which embedding model is great for how much is its size, and how does it perform, everything. And that's a great resource for anyone who wants to get started with that. I can definitely share the link later, or it's pretty easy. Even if you search Hugging Face leaderboard embedding models, it should pop up.
Great.
That's about embedding models. For this specific example, because I wanted it to run fast and I wanted I just wanted to make sure it's working. Like what I had in my head, my architecture, it worked. So I used Gina AI. It's actually not the best one to go ahead with. And I also used a very small model of that version. I remember from the whole ranking, it ranks 46th or something. So there are much better ones. But yeah, depending.
Why did you choose this? Was it because it was the fastest time to get something working? Was it this most frictionless developer experience? There has to be a reason that you would choose an inferior model.
No, actually, it wasn't because it was the fastest time to get started. So I've built this whole product in Rust, actually. And it's not Go. Yeah, surprisingly. So the machine learning stack in Rust is called Scandal. It's again something that I got interested in from another engineer back at my previous company. And again, kudos to Maxwell. He is a super amazing machine learning engineer. And he was the one to, it was literally the word candle, which was like, what is candle? What is candle? So it got me into that. But the point is, I am using an embedding pipeline tool known as Embed Anything. It's open source. It's from a fellow Indian NRI, or like she's an Indian, Sonam. I'm going to talk to her soon again. She's from Berlin, actually.
Oh,
So she has built this, and it felt the best tool to go ahead with for just using my embedding model and the vector database setup. So, and she had an example with Gina AI in her, so it felt very quick to set up. So yes, great developer experience from her side, so that I could pick it up quite faster.
incredible. Okay, so you got a prototype working with Gina AI. You found specialized models to convert a code base into embeddings. Where are you storing those embeddings? Does your tool spin up like a Pinecone or Chroma or something locally and store them in there?
So the most invigorating part for me from this whole project was that I built my own vector database as well.
What?
Yeah, because guess what? It's not like, not, let's forget production use cases, but for fun tools and examples, it's not that hard to build a vector database.
What? Come on. This okay, just so you know, that's going on the thumbnail of this. It's not that hard to build a vector data. Okay, consider me interested. How? What? How?
So I was sure about the fact that I didn't want to use a vector database service to build this. And I just wanted to store let me just rephrase it again. What I mean to say when I built my own vector database is I stored my embeddings into vectors and I put them on my disk. So whenever I have to, like, instead of like having them in memory or something, they are saved on my disk. And that is a database file that I'm using. And it's pretty, I know I shouldn't say straightforward, because that just like completely closes any details about it. But yeah, the flow is as simple as you use an embedding model, you have a query text. You save the vectors into a vector, and on the other side you have converted your whole code base into vectors, and you've stored it into a vector index on your database. And that database that you store, you can is a vector database. So, and when you're using any third-party service as well, like, what you're actually doing is you just have ready-made functions to do all the key value pairing. That's that. I don't have a lot of experience using other vector databases. My experience has been always with using pure databases.
So you just convert the code base into a big list of numbers, and you store those numbers somewhere on the disk, maybe in like a temporary directory or something like that. And then you have the code base represented as numbers. So then you just do like cosine similarity search against these files on disk. Okay.
Yes. So you can again reconsider if this is me building my vector database or running my use case, but it works beautifully for me so far. And I do plan to do some optimizations in terms of speed and things, but currently also it is fast. I won't say pretty fast, but it is fast. Yeah. I was surprised. Yeah.
This is so cool because it really is like a feather in the cap of the local first movement. Yeah, it's also probably like extremely secure because you're not using someone's hosted Postgres with PG vector somewhere. It's just on device, it sounds like.
Yes. That is also one of the things that so for the LLM calls, specifically for my tool, I did use OpenAI because the developer experience was just so good to like pick up and think. But you can always switch it up with like using a model from Ollama or Hugging Face, and that will work in the similar way. And that's one of the steps I want to try it out, because when I demoed this app, this was one of the major questions I got. Like, hey, we could completely like use it offline as well, like local first and offline, because if I'm using a locally downloaded model, I don't even need internet to get the LLM support for this. And two more concepts, which I think you did talk about re-ranking. There is a beautiful concept I again came to know, which is known as Hyde.
Hyde?
Hyde. Hyde. Oh,
tell us about this. I haven't heard about this one.
The full form of Hyde is Hypothetical Document Embeddings. I hope that's correct. I think it is. Sometimes I keep forgetting but yeah, it's basically a hypothetical document.
Okay.
And a lot of RAG systems, I mean, you're an expert in RAG systems, so you might know better, but a lot of search systems have now started using Hyde, which basically creates a hypothetical document before you even start your actual search, so that it just vector search and re-ranking aren't the only two kinds of comparisons or searchings that are coming into picture.
That's awesome. You just solved a huge problem that I was facing in my app. But please keep talking.
There are so you can do Hyde at different steps in your pipeline. So when you hit a query, this query will first be converted. This is again where an LLM is used. It does add latency because you are claiming this to be vector search first, but then it is actually using an LLM. But the goal of this is to improve your search results. That LLM call isn't supposed to give you the exact answer. It's supposed to tell your vector search and your embedding models what direction to look in. So any query that you put in, a hypothetical document is created around how the answer would look like, and how your, for example, what is Hyde itself, and a hypothetical document would
good. Yeah.
And then vector search takes place in the way it is, like your query is converted into vectors, then you already have an index. And in the end, all these comparisons happen. Like first vector search does the cosine thing. There is an output that you get. Then there is re-ranking that happens. And then there is a Hyde. So Hyde can happen before re-ranking or after re-ranking as well. You can decide the flow. And the output is being closest to your actual answer, which is very important when you're talking about code-based RAG.
Fantastic. I want to hear the second concept, and then I want to make it really practical by talking to you about an app I'm building that is so close. It's maybe code-based, but a different kind of code-based search. But let's talk about that second concept, because Hyde is so cool, and I was using it without even knowing I was using it to solve a very specific problem. So thank you for telling me what it's called. But what's the second concept?
The second concept, so this is a concept that I'm not using in my code base currently, but I do plan to use it. I get most of my information from Twitter and like what people reshare and what. There is this embedding model and this type of embedding known as Matryoshka embedding model. Are you aware of it?
No.
It's been, since I've heard about it, I have been stuck on it. So a Matryoshka doll, I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing it right. Matryoshka doll is a Russian.
Matryoshka, yeah. It's those like infinite dolls where you you open one and there's another one inside and you just keep going until, okay.
So a Matryoshka doll is like, there are dolls and dolls and dolls inside the bigger doll. And that's the same, let's try to put that same logic of having different layers that peel off when we talk about embedding models. So normally, currently, our embeddings, when we convert a single text, or like when we take a line, you get a big dimension, or depending on like how much the dimension your embedding model supports. Now, as you go higher with a better embedding model, the dimensions of the embedding model increases. And that will affect performance. That will affect speed. So Matryoshka embedding model proposes that when your text or when your content is converted into vectors, the initial vectors have most of the information about your object. So as the vector follows, the initial vectors have the most information about your object, and the less important information is stored at the end of your vector. Like you can imagine an array, and in the initial array, there is the most important things that define that object, that make it easier for you to locate that object in the whole index of ... vectors.
Right. So we can think about it maybe even in plainer language, as if we consider like us as human beings, then if we were represented as vectors, like towards the beginning of the vector of the array, there would be human being, breathes oxygen, eats food, and then like somewhere at the end is like something very specific, like only drives like red bicycles or something like that.
Yeah, likes Diet Coke over Pepsi. Like that would be at the end of the definition of human beings, right? And if you break that chunk of your embedding of your vector, the first chunk would still hold the most information about your object. So the goal is to keep chunking the embedding to a point where the size gets like decreases, but most information still stays. And that embedding model helps you have more faster search, helps you store more information, and makes like basically helps having smaller runtimes majorly. So this is one topic that I am now interested in. I'm looking forward to getting into more depth.
Fantastic. Yeah, you said smaller runtimes. I think that's so profound because when you're working with embedding models and search, similarity search, the trade-off is usually, am I trading speed or am I trading accuracy, right? Like if you search for a long time, then it's probably more accurate. But if you search, if you do, this is also just true for like human life. If you go to a grocery store and you want to find the best piece of food, you have to search a lot versus if you just take the first thing.
Right.
And so what it sounds like is that this Matryoshka embedding model architecture, if you can call it that, gives you like a significant speed improvement without sacrificing that much accuracy.
There are losses. Yes, of course. It is not it's not a lossless conversion that happening, that there will be loss in information. But one thing I love to believe in, if I want to have a technological motto in life, I don't have a lot, but the few that I have come around search. First one is the problem of search is not solved. I feel we are still a bit away from, we will solve it for sure with all the things that were happening in AI, but search is yet to be solved. And secondly, search will always be use case based. You cannot have everything. And I think that even shouldn't be the goal. If it's life-saving search, then it has to be fast and accurate. Then maybe you give up on, like, it's more expensive. It's going to be expensive. You're going to need more compute time. If it's something that you can, which is not like instantaneous and something, but needs accuracy, then maybe you can do it with more compute time, but with more time as well. So it will still be a give and take of what is your use case and why you need that search. And but Matryoshka model specifically helps you have more like faster results.
Yeah.
At a point of, like, this is my quoting, I haven't tested this, but this is based on what I've read. It's not heavy loss. Like the accuracy is still good and not to a point where, like, what the hell is it saying?
Yeah. Good. Wow, that's cool. I actually want to use that. Thank you so much for telling me about your product, the way it's built. And I think most importantly, honestly, the biggest just like gold nugget for me was the Hyde, HYDE, hypothetical document. That's so cool. I'd love to tell you about this app I'm building that's very close to your thing, except it's not code-based search. So as you know, I care a lot about health, mental, physical, spiritual, all kinds of health. And there's just very, very compelling research around the act of journaling for mental health. And so there's, I forget the scientist who did this, but there was this like old paper that's constantly cited where people who spend 15 minutes, maybe every day, maybe 3-4 times a week, 15 minutes just writing about some painful experience consistently, it just stops being painful after a while. Just 15 minutes, right? Yeah. And so I thought, wow, that's cool. Maybe I should build something for that. Because we, especially now with all the stuff that's going on in the world, I bet there's enough pain to go around. And so I started building this app. I know there's a lot of people, but this is great for mental health, but I was thinking also about spiritual health. And there's a lot of people who have various beliefs in various religious texts, the Quran, the Bible, all of this. And so I thought, okay, what if we can codify religious texts into vectors and do similarity? So you just journal the way you journal, and once you've written something significant, it will give you like language from your texts, your religious texts that kind of encourage you. That's kind of the initial idea. The problem that I faced with vector search is if you write down something, and I've been using this app like just myself, and it's been actually really helpful. But if I have a bad day and I write down like, oh, my life sucks, I'm so angry, like all of this, like they're bombing Iran, what's going on, like just a bunch of stuff. And it's mostly negative, then because vector search works the way it works, I just get back like all of the most negative verses from like the Bible, And so this isn't encouraging; it's the opposite. It's like reinforcing your grief, And so I was like, this isn't actually helpful. And so I started then thinking, wait, there has to be a way to fix this. And if the sentiment is like, if the person is going through something very painful, somehow using vector search, get back something positive. But that's against the design of vector search, right? Because like negative semantic equals negative semantic result. And so this is where I started building like a hypothetical document. I didn't even know this was called Hyde. But what I would do is I would take my writing, my journal, give it to an LLM, and say, take this negative stuff and add encouraging words to it. And that's the hypothetical document. And then I would pass this to vector search, and now I get back a lot more meaningful results. I'm curious, does that sound reasonable? If you were building a similar thing, what would you do differently? I'm curious about your take on the whole thing.
First of all, I love the idea. I myself read Bhagavad Gita a lot. And I keep rereading. And there are like some verses from Bhagavad Gita that I keep going back to every time I feel a bit impatient, or I feel like this whole thing of like the world is going into doom and like all of that kind of feelings. I like to read my favorite verses and things. And currently what I have is I've saved it on my Kindle and like it's highlighted. But sometimes I have to like find through those highlights also. And
yeah.
What do you mean? Like, I want to put in my thoughts, like, this is then I want Krishna to tell me, like,
yeah,
you should have done, like, this is how you look at it, Pratim. And this shouldn't be like an LLM Krishna telling me, but this is actually a connecting verse from Gita. So
yeah.
I would love to use that. And I think this is a beautiful, it's very difficult to even come up with something like that. Like, it's very thoughtful to even connect these two things together and think of that. So yeah.
Do you read it in English? I'm curious if this has been translated into English.
Yes, it has been translated into English. I won't recommend like I won't have any favorites or something. I think everything has some or the other little bit of propaganda involved in it. So I think it's based on like what fits you, whose version of what fits you. But there are a lot of English translations. My husband was interested in my culture as well. Like, he's French and he wanted to understand like my culture. So he has also picked up a version of Gita, and it's English, Sanskrit, Hindi, and French.
Wow.
So yeah, it's like translations have been going beyond devices to people. But yeah, the point is, what would I do different?
Yeah, because here, maybe just some more context. What I did was, I love what you're doing also by building your own vector database and sort of generating embeddings on the fly, it sounds like. So if I drop your project into my repo, sort of as the initialization step, it will build out this vector index.
Yes.
I don't do that, mainly because the Bible and stuff doesn't really change. So what I've done is I've taken all of the Bible and turned it into vectors. And stored it in like a Postgres database, and I do PG vector search. So yeah, maybe that's another detail, because considering what you would do differently, would you generate new vectors every time? I'm curious about all of it.
So I decided to index every time and build a vector index every time, because as you mentioned, like my code bases will keep changing, and again, there is a concept of understanding the language of the grammar of every code, right? So it has to be different. And there is another concept known as tree sitters, which is part of understanding like your ASP,
Syntax tree.
syntax understanding grammar. And it depends. Like my tool currently also only majorly understands Rust.
Okay.
So it can index Rust code better. So coming back to the main point about something like your tool, it makes complete sense because most of the religious text is already out there. So a one-time embedding conversion is more than enough, and there isn't anything that's going to be created on the fly that you need to index. But you never know if there are more religions that come up, if there's an AI religion that comes up, or white coding religion that comes up one day and you want to include that, then you might do it.
Right. Okay. So my pipeline is basically that. Like I take a journal entry that I've written, I turn it into a Hyde. I love this new word. It's so cool. A Hyde. That Hyde becomes the basis for vector search across a religious text. You get back a bunch of verses that are maybe, they fit the original entry. They maybe don't. They maybe fit the Hyde better. And so you get back a bunch of verses. You then pass these verses to a re-ranker with the original query text. And then finally, there's I don't even know what this is called. I'm using a factory. Gosh, it's some type of filter, MML filter. Does that mean anything to you? I'm using this from LangChain. They've got basically what it will do is it will convert the search results to vectors and the query to vectors, and it will make sure that there's novelty. So like it's not always the same results every time. But that's my full pipeline, and it sounds like it's actually quite close to yours. And I'm starting to wonder now, is this the gold standard? Is this what most people doing vector search based applications should strive towards?
I don't know. I think, again, my use case hasn't seen scale. I think everything we believe or try to build is tested only when we test around scale.
That's a great quote. You should like write it down. Yeah.
Everything, right? Not just code base or in life. When we're tested on scale is when you get back to see like our mental models, our architectures, do they still stand? Do their walls stand? And that's where a lot of part that comes through DevRel or that comes through talks or that comes from open source is helpful. I know a lot of strategies will stand because I've seen them from people's products that have stood. So my understanding about search, like this is it comes from this talk that was given last year by a search company, and it's again an engineer from Waterloo, a CS grad from Waterloo, a super young person, and he's talking about how they tested the most common full text search algorithms and all of that, and how it did not scale and how it was completely disastrous and took a lot of time when you were talking about millions of queries and with restricted resources. And that's when they fit in a lot of optimization algorithms, or like they build their own optimizations. So I think we build tools, we open them up for people to try, we see what are their limits, and then we either build a solution on top of that, we go back to maths, or we just learn from what other people are doing. So nice. That's as much as I know.
It's great because we don't have I think there's a lot of pressure when people are building tools early, similar to your chat with your code base tool, where we feel the need to like have all the answers from day one. And, if I heard you correctly, you're just like, I don't know. We'll figure it out when we get to it. But right now, let's build, which I think is so cool because it biases towards action.
It's been a long journey to this. I've also been this person. No, the solution that I build has to be the perfect one. And the whole goal of software development, software engineering is that you're never going to be on the perfect solution with day 1, try 1, not even day 10, try 10. It is going to take a lot of trials and errors and a lot of things. And it's again something that I learned from my peers, my seniors, who keep reminding me, don't aim for the most perfect solution, work towards the perfect solution.
That's so incredible. And you've been in exactly that spirit. You've been such a outspoken advocate for product-led growth, where you have a product and the product itself leads its growth. You also mentioned you went with OpenAI because of the frictionless developer experience. You are a developer experience evangelist. So much of your work is geared towards developer experience. And so I'm curious, in your view, what makes developers really, fall in love with a tool, and to the point where they're just organically sharing it with others, as opposed to, relying on marketing tactics that maybe will work, maybe won't work?
Again, I'm going to give the most common answer that we give in our
let's go.
domain. But I think you've already guessed it. So let's skip even saying that word at this point, because everyone might know the context. The fact being, it depends. That's what I was going for. The click stays common for everyone. When a tool clicks for you, or when a technology clicks for you, stays the common ground for developers. And from my use case, if I'm trying a set of technologies, if one technology clicks to me based on my checklist, for me, the developer experience is great for that. I personally believe, now I'm sure there are different ways people look at developer experience, and I personally believe developer experience is very subjective, and it differs from people to people. It literally depends on who's consuming your product. For example, someone who loves is into a lot of great UI experiences, or loves the detalities of how crisply things are built, versus someone who doesn't care. And the same tool, if they are a tool that can be used by both these developers, it's going to be hard to make both of them happy. So you have to reach each developer to their own. And so the point is, it has to click for a developer. That's my one-line answer of how to make better developer experience. And then what developer persona you're going towards, it will depend on that, how it clicks for them. So,
but ChatGPT, or maybe Cursor, clicks for everyone, it seems like. Or maybe not everyone, but what is 100 million? ChatGPT is running now 400 million users a week, weekly active users, right? Roughly. So at some point, yes, each one has their own preference, but also it seems like those preferences cluster. There's things that on average a majority of developers like, and a majority of developers don't like. I think in a very basic sense, it's if you're doing a talk at a conference, are you doing a sales pitch? Are you just hey, use my product, it's great? Or are you talking about why the product is, or are you even talking about how it's built? And what we've seen is most developers will prefer technical deep dive, here's how this thing works. Whether you use it or not, I don't care. I'm not here to sell you something. I just want you to look at the technical brilliance of this model and just marvel at it, right? People tend to like that. So I'm curious, in your work, even at Treble, Surreal, you mentioned Surreal a few times, were there levers that you were able to identify that would sort of help things click a bit more?
Before I answer this question, you mentioned that ChatGPT is like a product that clicks for everyone. There is a beautiful talk given by the first marketing hire at OpenAI. She was focused on making ChatGPT click to users. Now, before I saw that video, I was like, ChatGPT clicks for everyone. It's so easy to use. Why wouldn't someone know how to use it? Or and she, in that video, she beautifully explains, I think it's with, it should be easily searchable on YouTube. But
we'll put a link to that in the show notes.
I'll share it with you. She talks about the fact that she realized people were using ChatGPT for very similar use cases. And there was a lot more that ChatGPT could do. And the marketing team at OpenAI, which built such an amazing product-led growth product, still was at a question like, how do we tell people what to do with the product? And that's when they started pushing out different ways to use, like, hey, these are the different prompts you could use. Like, this is another use case that ChatGPT could help you with. Like, I always love this connection between how their image model improved. And at the same time, there was this whole trend around Ghiblify your image.
Yeah.
And yes, the image model has improved. Like, that's a technical information that was out there. But how the image model improved and how you could connect it was when the trend, or when like people started talking about like, I Ghiblified my image. And it's like, that's when people could connect the dots. So yeah, just a point. I feel there is always, yes, there is a baseline of how a tool can be understood, but there's always so much more that the team would know about the capabilities. And again, connecting to bias of knowledge, curse of knowledge, that your users won't have the slightest idea that your product can do that.
Mm.
So yeah, just a thought I thought I should share.
It's a very good thought.
What was your question? I remember about what my learnings around developer
levers a company could turn to click better with developers.
I have been lucky to have different levers at different companies that I have worked with.
Awesome.
I worked majorly with, after my first early stint as a full stack developer at UBS, which was like a lot of Java, a lot of like writing test cases, and a lot of developer work. But after that, I worked with a lot of early stage companies, and the levers were different based on the type of product, the type of founding team, the type of leadership, and the type of market share or like PMF that the product had. Some of my recent learnings and something that I have taken ahead from my last job, or like I have now at Treble. Back at SterialDB, it was very, very important that everything that we put out in terms of blogs or examples or everything was tested out to the end of means. Like, if you're putting out any blog about, and if you're claiming any performance improvements or anything, any metrics, you have to spend an extra amount of time to just test them out.
Mm.
We it is a database product, right? And like, if you're dealing with databases, you have to be sure about the numbers.
Yeah.
This is one of the things that the company really believed in, is trust. And at Treble, because security is so important to APIs and all of that, something that we really believe is like, if you're building something, how would this look for production?
Mm.
Or like, how does it look for a traditional finance company?
So, with monolith.
Yeah, monolith. I wouldn't say monolith specifically. Let's take traditional finance companies with microservices.
Okay.
Monolith would like be very different. But yeah, your goals around building systems then have to be secure. Like, a very small example is like, if I'm building an example app, which is something that I'm going to be using at work, it cannot go out without auth, or it cannot go without the basic important needs for making a product secure. So developer experience levers, yeah, there are some basic levers which are about making sure that a product is well understood by developers. But then for me, it was majorly about the levers that helped showcase what is the biggest pain point that product solves.
Mm.
And like, why this product? And a lot of developer experience was around shining, polishing, and focusing on that part. Like, I don't know if
Okay.
if that's answered your question.
That's perfect. Yeah, like find the key differentiators and pay special attention to them, which maybe we can try this exercise practically with treble, given that that's your job. Uh, let's assume the people listening have no idea what treble is, or why they should use it. How do you make it click using some of those levers?
One of my favorite things to do is if they're an API product, like if they're an API first product. For people who don't know what an API first product means, is like if your company or if your product makes money based on the API that your product has put out. If it's
Similar to, well, I mean, in that case, is ChatGPT, like is OpenAI an
OpenAI,
API first?
yes.
Okay.
OpenAI, Twilio, Google's APIs, or any API that you integrate or is available for other developers, Stripe, or is
Right.
available for other developers to integrate, is an API first product. Now, one of my favorite exercises to do is if an API first product has their open API spec available online, is to take that open API spec. Now, there are different tools that can judge an open API spec and tell you how good it is. And
Are these AI based?
so at Treble, we have our own tool for that. It comes under governance, but yeah, it's a very common tool actually. And you don't even need them to be AI based because a lot of, as we mentioned, microservices are pretty old. REST APIs are so old. A lot of these rules have been there for a long time. So the first step is to just make sure you're checking those boxes. So as I was mentioning, the exercise is to take their API spec and to drop it in our tool. Like we have a governance tool, it's known as API Insights. To drop that API spec and to show how that API spec has rated the API design and what it means to have a more safer API design and how it could be better. And that's a click. That's a click for a lot of people every day. And at this point, I have now come over this bias of knowledge where I'm like, okay, just because I know this, just because my industry knows this, doesn't mean that everybody is aware of this.
Yeah.
And this is education even now, even if it has been explained again and again. And it brings up the most basic things like how should your endpoints be named, how to do API versioning. And you'll be surprised, Tejas, so many large companies that we're using today still don't have API versioning.
Wow.
They don't have API versioning. There are use cases, or there are like examples where a lot of teams consider endpoints as separate APIs.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so this was an example of like how
you make it
we
click.
let the product click, and it just opens like people's minds when we show them where they are and
Yeah.
what instant value a dev tool can add. And
Interesting.
yes, then there's a lot of other things. Yeah.
So it sounds like treble based on. So I'm a developer. Let's test if it's clicking with me. It sounds like it's just a open API validator on steroids. So that's what it clicked as anyway.
So as I mentioned, Insights is one tool under the Treble platform.
Got you. Okay.
So if you have an API and you want to make sure you never get in trouble and your API is making you money, you would use Treble.
I see. Okay. So it's like API insurance in a way. Like it's like, okay, got you. Cool. I'd love to try it. We actually, where I work right now, DataSex, we don't have any. We have maybe one API based tool, but interesting. Does it? I'm curious now. Does it help with security monitoring? For example, is your API susceptible to man-in-the-middle attacks? Is your API, leaking certain details and tokens, etc.?
Yes, and this is something
Cool.
like it looks complicated to figure out, but Treble does it so beautifully that the ease of information of such important steps makes it feel like, oh, it's like I know this because I'm using Treble, but if someone's requesting your, like if someone's using your API and the requests that are coming in, do they have passwords leaked? Do they have sensitive information leaked? Sitting as a product developer, you want it to be one click. Like you want it to like literally like you're scrolling Instagram, you want to see how secure your requests are. And that's what I love about, like, at least I don't want to talk a lot about Treble or anything, but like most case sensitive things or shouldn't be that hard to solve or shouldn't be that hard to discover. You shouldn't need like a big team of like security team and like,
Yeah.
because this is not innovational, like the part of like basic rules. It's
Yeah.
out there. You just need someone to give you an open chart into how things look currently and move ahead from there.
That is so cool. I can see now why you're such a developer experience evangelist, why you're like so well known, because you indeed you did make it click here, and you gave us like, you talked about first of all making it click, and then you gave us like a practical demo of how to make something click. I think that's very worthy of praise. You mentioned, as we started the episode, you mentioned in my previous engineering career, you said this a few times, which then leads us to hear that you don't consider yourself having an primarily engineering career today, but you're focused more on, what is it, DevRel, developer evangelism?
I code a lot. I write a lot of code, but I agree that a lot of it is not open source. A lot of them go out as private projects, something that I'm testing around or something. I've tried being purely a developer, and it did feel it felt a bit suffocating to me.
Yeah.
It's been what, 4 years now when I left, and I didn't even have a big full stack developer stint. It was 2 years that I spent as a full stack developer, but I felt suffocated because of the access I had to how much involvement I would have with the code that I'm writing. Now, this has a lot of things because I was working for a big tech and I was working for a very traditional big tech as well. And I'm pretty sure like developers today who work for like high growth startups and like a lot of recent startups, they do grow as product owners. They do get more product ownership. But when I was working as a developer, I did not get that. Mine was like, you do this is your task, and you finish
Stay
it.
in
And
your
then,
lane type of energy.
yeah, and then I was like, and I would sometimes dream, where did my code go? Which financial advisor sitting in the US is using that piece of microservice that I built? And it did not feed into my curiosity. And developer advocacy has been feeding into my curiosity. Like, it lets me ask questions beyond just writing code. Like, it lets me ask business questions. It lets me ask user experience questions. And I don't know what's in the future. I don't know if I would love to be a developer again, and I do consider myself a developer.
Yeah.
I would definitely like to have more production experience, and this is something I try to work with the team that I'm working at. Like, for example, and founders have been great, like back at Sarilibi, at Treble, or any company that I've worked. They're like, okay, you want production experience. We know that you don't have a lot. We'll help you. We'll help you with a senior engineer. So, yeah, I don't know what I might do, but one thing I'm sure, I don't want it to be capped to a point like you only write code. No.
Yeah.
I think that's never going to be with me anymore.
Yeah. So just so I understand, you indeed, no doubt, you are developing. You're building this cool code-based search app, but you see yourself as more of a person who cares about more than just code.
Yes.
But you also have this gift of communication and making it click. And so that you would say then that those are the core skills of what maybe a developer advocate should have. And I'm asking because there's a lot of people listening to this going like, I write a lot of code, but I can't bring myself to care about the code as much as they want me to, because I'm eager, similar to you, I'm eager. And what I'm hearing from this, and I'm just really trying to extract for the listeners, is if you're in a similar place, not you, Pratim, but listeners, maybe DevRel is for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, I think there shouldn't be any pressure on any sides to be good
Yeah.
at everything. I feel like there's this weird propaganda on social media that you need to be good at everything, and like,
Yeah.
no, you don't need to. Like, okay, I get it. Like, I don't consider myself as to be a deep expert in something, but there was a point where I used to feel like, oh, just because I don't like write a lot of production code, I'm not really a cracked engineer, or I'm not really good at what doing. And for example, like, my husband is an amazing developer. Like, he handles a lot of scale, and like, he's the one who's working with big scales, he's pushing his systems, and then he loves the way I explain things. And
Yeah.
there are times like when we are out, and like, because we work in such technical stuff, and people, non-technical people, ask us like what we are doing. I am the one explaining what he does at his job as well to the people. And he's like, I can't do it like you. And I'm like, okay, it's fine, but I don't know if I could like scale systems like you do. So I think it should be fine to just fine tune at what you're good at. And you're not going to lose your job if you know what you're good at and if you can always bring value to someone. And yeah, I also heard this thing like on social media a lot. Devils are going to lose their jobs, like blah, blah, blah. Sorry. Yeah, what do you think? What do you think, Tejas?
No, I agree with you. Like I don't think DevRel employees are going to lose their jobs. I just think it needs to be rethought. Yeah, because I've seen it go. I think we both have seen it go wrong as well, quite often, where you're measured on like how many leads you generate as if it's a sales position. But if it's done right, it can be really beautiful. In fact, like there's this whole movement now with AI models trying to replace engineers, as you've known, like a lot of people are going like, oh, your engineering job is going. I actually believe that the people like I'm trying to say this with as much tact as possible. People like your husband are more at risk of losing their job than people like you, because code is easy now to generate, right? But the ability to communicate at a human level is maybe we'll get there soon, but we're gonna replace code sooner than that. Like you can chat with, what is it, like 11 Labs is this company that does like voice models. It sounds quite human, and you can like probably maybe 11 Labs can explain what we all do very well, like DevRel professionals, but it's still less binary than like code. If statements, for loops, switch, like that's just fully logical, and communication is many times illogical. Like the most weird nonsense gets traction on social media, and so I think there's more of a randomness factor there. So I think those jobs will not go as soon.
Absolutely. One thing about like scaling systems or like senior developers,
Yes.
what I feel is I personally don't think their skill is in writing code. Their skill stands in knowing how to fix situations that no one has seen.
Whoa, that's such an awesome take, and I already see where you're going with this, but say more.
No, I brought the point of like, because I could connect it with my husband. Like, one of the things
Yeah.
I love about him, like, is not because he writes great code, is because when there are scenarios like both of us have never seen, like with respect to our code, with respect to just hosting our code or anything, he can use the examples from his experiences to come up with a solution which was not there yet, like, and hacking solutions. And this is where we have time and again seen AI models not being there yet.
Yeah. No, that's so true, because they're trained on historical data, and they're not, whatever novelty they come up with is usually hallucinated and doesn't make any sense.
Yes.
Whereas for us, like our neural networks that live inside our heads, they're very, absolutely. And so maybe that's another takeaway for people who are like scared of losing their jobs is you probably should make sure that your job is in a way not worth losing. Meaning you're not just producing code, but you're solving problems, especially
Yeah.
novel problems.
Yeah, I think the more unique, non scalable problems that you solve, is the more safer you might be in this industry, or the more, that's what an expert is, right? Like an expert, like how many unique problems you've solved that other people haven't been able to solve, and then you solve it for everyone, and then everyone can solve it. You move to the next one. Like that's how I look at it.
So you've also got this big wealth of experience there as well. Fantastic. I want to let's start by wrapping up and talking about maybe the less technical. We spent quite a bit talking about the technical side of engineering and developer relations as well, like with vector search and all this. But you, from following you on social media and from just talking in general, you tend to have a very full life. I would say more so than the average developer, or at least maybe you just share that more. I don't know. But I'm curious, what are some ways that we can, as developers, emulate you in a sense? What I mean by that is not be like Pratim, but maybe have more going for Pratim than just I know how to code and this is what I do all the time. I guess the question lends itself well to maybe work-life balance and avoiding burnout in general.
I can tell you how my brain works.
Yes.
How I have learned to fine-tune my brain. What are the...
I will add, the reason I'm also asking is because you mentioned there's this pressure, right? Like we feel like we have to be good at everything and we have to and from that statement you just made, it's very clear that you don't buy into this pressure and you stay true to your values. So how can we do that?
It is not easy to do it on yourself, first thing. It is very, very simple, easy, and okay to be susceptible to all of these things because it's out there. Like I think everyone is selling, just doing more, hustling, don't sleep. Like, what is sleep? Work more, like, push your credits more. And so just having really strong people in your life with more experience has helped me personally. Like, I am blessed to have some very strong-minded friends and family members, and even my partner, that I trust and whom I allow to give me advice, opinion. I discuss with them and I take, when they have an advice, I try to implement it. Like, I have a very good relationship with the peers in my family or my friends. And I feel it really helps me to get out of this social media cult or this one kind of like mind numbing flow that everyone has. And like, it's like literally my uncle just tapping me and like I tap out. And I'm like, okay, let's go to the gym. Like my back is a real back. It's not a machine. Like I need to focus on my health as well. Point being, right. One thing which has helped me become the person that I am today. I was not always like this, of course. Like I was like every other teenagers in India who wanted to get a job and like make things better for them. Super anxious, super scared, broke. Is to have really good mentors. They can come from anywhere in your life, personal life, family, friends, to check in with them. So yeah, this has really helped me to become the person I am. And
how did you seek out these mentors yourself? Did they make themselves available? Because like there's a lot of people that I know who are just scared, right? They're like, I look up to this person. Even like this is not a flex, so people will come to me like super shy, super scared, like, oh my God, I want to ask, can we? And they like hesitate like 8 times, and ultimately I just find out they just want like some guidance and some mentorship.
I was sorry, but even I was shy when I first met you, and I was like.
But am I unapproachable? I don't get it. But I find that people are just sometimes when you, which I appreciate that you looked up to me. I hope you still do. But when there's someone like that who you want to mentor you, I can understand there can be some fear, some anxiety. I actually not so recently I asked someone to mentor me and bro just totally ghosted me. So I can maybe relate. But for those people, I'm curious if you could share a little bit more about how you went about that mentorship. Were you surrounded by proactive people who were like, Pratim, you're awesome, let me mentor you, or did you have to overcome some barriers to that?
one part of this is I am privileged enough to be in to be around highly educated, highly experienced people in my family. This is the first part where I get good mentorship. Like,
Awesome.
I'm just privileged enough to be around people who
You were
could
just
afford.
born into a group like this.
Yes, like who could afford good education, who had this mindset that they wanted to learn more, have more experience. And the second was, one thing if I'm really proud of about myself is I've been able to use social media in a good way. So I used social media to find or like seek out these mentors. And then it has been a give and take relationship, which is based on vulnerability and like, which is based on just being real and not being like I don't want to say the typical word. I'll just say bad and not being just bad. Like, just be a good person with
What
people.
was the word? What was the original word?
Not being an asshole. Like, that's what I was.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, since I use social media to connect with the right people, learn more about them, see if I connect with their morals, not just at work or
Yeah.
even outside work, because that is a very important thing for me, to connect someone's morals across the whole spectrum. Like,
Yeah.
it might be different for everyone. For me, a person who's great at XYZ, but they're really bad people out of XYZ, they don't stand as mentors for me. Unfortunately, they don't.
Yeah.
They could work for other people, but this is my way of looking at things.
Okay, so the takeaway is if somebody wants mentorship from someone they look up to, just find a way to get in touch with them on social media. DM them or something and see what happens.
You first realize why you want mentorship from them, and then, yes, of course.
That's so good. When I was much younger, there was this one, I will not name names because you know him, prominent CEO in the tech startup scene that I really looked up to, and I DM'd for mentorship, and it went nowhere, and I was pretty sad about it. But like years later, what happens, right? Like there was a lot of negative press about this person. I was like, well, thankfully I dodged a bullet. So. Yeah, let that, I guess, be an encouragement to people who have had similar experiences. Yeah. All right. Hey, last question. I'm curious if you're interested in, or rather, I'm curious what emerging technologies, and so this, vector search doesn't count. Vector search is like emerged. It's around. Anything emerging or trends these days that you're seeing that you're excited about and that you're paying attention to that maybe developers should watch for? For example, MCP is something that people are fairly bullish on. I'm curious in your sphere, what's got your attention and you're like, this thing is it's new, but I'm interested.
There are. So you said vector search doesn't apply. I'm not sure if embedding models apply, because I feel this whole, like, until now we've been to a point where compute was expensive. Compute is still not that expensive. Like, is expensive, but it's not that expensive now. And I'm now interested in VLMs, vision language models.
What?
Vision language models, like VLMs, it's like they are large language models, but specifically with a mix of image and text. So basically talk to an image, like, which explains an image. It also has vector search under it, but I feel we are going to see a lot of great models and use cases of AI which are not text based anymore. Until now, this whole shift was chatting, chat GPT, chat with Ding, and now we are at a time where it's going to be image based. Click a photo or something that's going to click a photo.
Yeah.
The coolest thing that I recently saw is there's a company that takes photos of your poop. Did you notice that on like Twitter?
No. So wait. So I just like go to the bathroom. I take a photo of what's in there, and
so it's a thing that sits on your toilet, on your commode.
Okay.
And it just takes insane amount of pictures of your poop, and based on that, it tells you your gut health.
No way.
Makes sense, right? Like.
Yeah. Cool. Then so what? You buy this? This is a device that people can buy.
Yes, and they can just fit it on their machine, like on your where they sit, and then it's not going to take any of your like.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I mean, there's like is this open source? Because like.
So it's probably gonna. Oh my god! Like we're getting into too intense. So I'm really curious about how much knowledge we can tap from a single image, and what's the next thing around vision models and making it more accessible than to people who can see or like write or type. Because I have a lot of people in my family who like have some issues. Like in my family, there are a lot of people who are not at a point where they can use ChatGPT or something, and it's so frustrating that they can't use these AI tools. And it's everyone accessibility, right? Like
we've come full circle to accessibility. I love it. Yeah, I think of the scene from Iron Man where Tony Stark gets into his lab and he just like sits down and he's like, okay, Jarvis, let's lock in. And he's just like talking to this like assistant, and it takes vibe building to another level because you just have this like pair programmer that you could just go with. Cool. Multimodal AI. Fantastic. It's on the list. Hey, listen, with that, I'd love to just wrap up here and just take a moment and acknowledge, Pratim, you've shared so much with us. First of all, I'm very excited about your open source chat with your codebase tool. I look forward to trying it. I look forward to trying Treble for securing any API first products that I'm building. And generally, your advice on caring about the product and not being locked into engineering, but finding your fit and managing work-life balance well, and the focus on mentorship, it's so valuable. And so just on behalf of myself and everyone listening, just thank you so much for coming on and sharing these things with us.
Thank you for sending out that DM. I was I did a little jump when I got that DM from him. Like, oh my god, yes! I did that jump, and I think you're a beautiful human being, first of all, and you're great at just showing a mirror to people's thoughts. Like when I talk to you, I feel like I have a clear view of my own thoughts, which is, I think, a peak quality, not just in our industry, but as a human being. I'm honored and thank you so much. And looking forward to this coming out and looking forward to seeing other episodes from your talk.
Thank you for joining my discussion with Pratim Bhosale. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I hope you learned a ton of things, especially like Matryoshka embeddings. That was very interesting personally for me. If you're interested in talking more, Pratim is an open book. You can find her on social media, on X, LinkedIn, and others. There are links in the show notes. If you're learning from and or enjoying this content, a great way to support it is to just share it with your friends. Honestly, the more people know about this, the more they can maybe benefit from it like you have, and it can go somewhere. If you are watching on YouTube, then if you like and comment and maybe subscribe, that would also help. And of course, if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, if you leave a review, any review, up to whatever you think it deserves, up to 5 stars, that would also be a great help. For now, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being a part of the podcast. And most importantly, thank you for your interest in engineering.